Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Federico Brocchieri. I'm the Vice President of Italian Climate Network, which is an Italian non-profit organization working on climate change issues. It goes without saying that our whole mission is related to SDG 13, climate action. I would like to thank you for this opportunity to share our work, and I'll tell you just a few information about our organization. We were founded in 2011, so we are a relatively young organization, and we aim to build an inclusive and empowering movement that will lead to positive change in the society by establishing partnerships and cooperation as the principle outlined by SDG 17, Partnership for the Goal, suggests us. In this regard, we established partnerships with 350.org, the Climate Action Network Europe, and the World Bank's platform Connect for Climate. But we do not intend partnership just as establishing cooperation with different realities. We also intend it as covering as many aspects as possible of the climate change issue. This is why we work on science by organizing events to inform both experts and representatives about the latest scientific releases like the IPCC Fifth Assessment Report in 2013. We work on policy by trying to establish roundtables and cooperation with Italian policymakers and the Italian government to ensure that there is a cooperation between officials and civil society. We work on education by promoting a national school project to increase students' awareness on climate change and its related issues. And we work on awareness, highlighting the links between climate change and other topics such as the respect of human rights. We have ad hoc sections working on the respect of the right to health and the right of women and empowerment of women. And these are topics which are strictly related not just to SDG 3 with regards to the right to health, but also to SDGs 5 and 10 with regards to equality and gender equality. So, in the next few minutes, I would like to focus on a few of these projects, and I would like to start with a story. The story is about intergenerational equity. I'm not sure if any of you has already heard about this principle, but it is not a new principle. Basically, it's a principle that says that we should leave the planet to future generations in no worse conditions than those we inherited from our ancestors. But the discussion around this principle was not going on in the past few years. So in 2013, at COP19 in Warsaw, my organization, together with other organizations from all across the globe, decided to create an ad hoc working group that we call the Intergenerational Equity Working Group. And this working group basically decided to try to make sure that the principle would be placed into the Paris Agreement. It was a tough challenge that we decided to undertake in 2013. And the main reason we decided to do that is because the latest IPCC report tells us that we must ensure that global temperature increase at the end of the century does not exceed the 2 degrees. And in the Paris Agreement, as we know, the ultimate goal is to ensure that the temperature increase is well below 2 degrees and possibly below 1.5. So if we fail to ensure that temperature increase is below this quota, it means that we do not respect intergenerational equity. So if we want to avoid a temperature increase of over 4 degrees, which would have tremendous impacts all around the globe, we must find a way so that the principle is actually operationalized. And that was the principle guiding our activities. So how can we actually make the principle concrete? How can we operationalize intergenerational equity? The issue, as I said, was brought back in COP19, and after our efforts, we managed to get a mention to future generations in the outcome document of COP19, with a declaration signed by over 50 countries who supported our proposal. But then after COP19, we decided to continue, and we actually proposed for the principle to be discussed at a national level. We created in Italy the Italian Youth Think Tank on Intergenerational Equity, and we asked organizations and individuals to contribute by making concrete proposals on how we could actually operationalize the principle. We made a final document that we forwarded to the Italian Minister of the Environment, who endorsed our proposal, and during COP21, with the aid of other colleagues from other countries, they decided to actually endorse our text proposal that we made, and intergenerational equity was finally placed into the preamble of the degree. This was a huge success for us, and we are really proud of this. However, we don't want just to protect future generations, of course, which is a very important thing, but we also want to ensure that today's youth are well protected and educated on these issues. This is the reason why we decided to launch, as I mentioned before, a school project aiming at training students aged between 11 and 18 years old, in strict connection with SDG 4 on education and, of course, SDG 13 on climate action. The school project is aimed at helping students gaining the knowledge to understand environmental issues and accordingly to develop behaviors which may determine a change in their own lifestyles. The project consists of a series of classes to explain climate change to secondary students, but we are focusing on different topics. So we offer them a basic lesson on climate change, analyzing the causes, the consequences, and the solutions. And we also give them the chance to add in-depth classes on the relations with the negotiations, energy, the right to health, human rights, and the management of waste. Last year, we were able to reach over 20 schools in Italy for a total of over 1,400 students. And we have very big expectations for this year. And as I mentioned this morning during my question, yesterday there was the kickoff of our project, and we reached in a single day 650 students on the topic. So it was the best way we could imagine to start this new year. But the last initiative that I would like to present you today is the Mobilization of Citizens. Because as we know, getting people on the streets is not easy. It's not easy to ensure that people actually know what climate change is, and we must ensure that they demand for climate action. So, starting from 2014, in occasion of the UN Climate Summit, which was convened by Ban Ki-moon, we organized in Italy, together with other organizations, a first climate march, reaching the initiative which was promoted at the international level by 350.org. It was our first initiative, and for the first time, we brought people in the streets in Rome, in front of the Colosseum. And later on, in 2015, there was a march to celebrate Pope Francis' encyclical, Laudato Si', in cooperation with other interfaith movements. And finally, just ahead of COP21, another march was organized in the center of Rome to demand for climate action. Now, the thing is, this is not enough. We must find other ways to ensure that the message reaches not just those like us who are already informed about these topics. We must reach the general public. So I have two concrete proposals for this. It is just a beginning, and I would be very keen to discuss them. The first is the following. We need to strongly encourage government and education ministries to reform their school programs. Environmental education and climate change is not something that a citizen of tomorrow can live without. We must ensure that these topics are not just discussed by organizations like ours who go to schools and offer these lessons. These must be part of the official curricula of schools. So we must find a way to get governments and ministries of education to cooperate and actually reform their programs. The second proposal is, let's start a conversation with media. I personally have something against the way climate change is discussed in media generally, because if you want to find an information about climate change, you usually search for it in the environment section. But this is a problem because only those people who are actually already interested in environmental issues search for that section in newspapers online, for instance. So let's try to change the paradigm. I want to see climate change on the front page. I want to see climate change in the finance and economics section. We need to find concrete ways to reach a wider audience. Otherwise, we will be in a situation like the one I explained this morning, where sometimes people don't even know what the Paris Agreement is. We must reach a wider audience in the general public. And I'm sure that if we continue to act to raise awareness, promote education, and empower people, especially the most vulnerable ones, we can contribute to build a sustainable future. Together we can win this challenge. Thank you for your attention.